I have Prashanthi here today with me. Thank you, Prashanthi, for joining me.
Thank you, John. It's such an honor to be here.
Yeah, so you've written this book, Embracing Paradox, which is a practical guide for living with peace and clarity through Taoist philosophy. And I would love to explore your book with you, but why don't we begin by us just getting to know you a bit better? Tell us about your background, your family, upbringing, your intellectual endeavors, and as well as your spiritual.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Great question. Just growing up in India shaped my spiritual journey in a way that is so hard to describe without feeling it in your bones. Because in India, spirituality isn't something you study. You breathe it, you witness it, you kind of live inside it. And for me, the most formative experiences were the things I saw and felt long before I had the language to explain it. Like I grew up around my guru and I witnessed the moments that my logical mind had no framework for. Moments that just felt impossible and moments that just didn't fit inside the laws of physical reality as I understood them. And you see something like that even once, and something really shifts internally, and the door opens that doesn't close again. There was some kind of a quiet recognition right inside me. Maybe reality is bigger than what I can understand. Not a belief. It was more, I would say, like a felt truth. But then something else happened too. Something very human. I moved to a different environment, met different perspectives, entered the world of science, tech, logic, data, and suddenly the part of me that had witnessed the unexplainable started asking, like, was that real? Or was that projection? Or was I just young? I swung completely in opposite direction. And at that point, science became my anchor. Rationality became my safety. Data made me feel grounded. And honestly, that swing was necessary. It strengthened my discernment. It made me question. It made me explore, doubt, think, learn, and relearn. But here's that interesting part. Neither side felt complete on its own. Pure mysticism, without questioning, felt ungrounded. And pure rationality, without wonder, just felt empty. So I stopped trying to choose, and I began to inhabit that paradox between the two. And that paradox became my spiritual home. And the part of me shaped by India, the stories, the devotion, the mystery, the miracles didn't disappear. It just matured. It found humility. It became less about the spectacle and more about the presence. Those experiences awakened in me. And the part of me shaped by science, the logic, the analysis, the questioning, didn't destroy spirituality. It actually refined it. And it kept me from blind belief and guiding me toward the clarity and the groundedness. And Taoism entered my life at exactly that right moment. Because the Tao didn't force you to choose between the mystical and the rational. The Tao says they arise from the same source, the mystery and reason, intuition and logic, faith and discernment. And growing up in India taught me that there's far more happening in this universe than this rational mind can measure. And growing up into adulthood taught me that humility and clarity mattered just as much as wonder. And Taoism finally showed me how to hold both without conflict. And that's my spiritual journey in a sentence. I didn't choose between belief and science. I kind of learned to walk in that space where they
Mm,
meet. And I was very
mm,
fortunate, right, to have a guru. Not everyone gets a guru and gets to meet the guru, but I believe I was very fortunate. And my parents, my grandparents followed this guru, Sri Satya Sai Baba, and he shaped my spiritual journey in ways that's unimaginable, unexplainable. And what stood out, right, about him, especially in India in the early 1900s, was how boldly and beautifully he embraced all religions. At a time when unity across faiths wasn't commonly emphasized, his message was
mm.
simple and profound. Truth is one, paths are many, love all serve all. That teaching sank into me very early. It taught me that wisdom doesn't belong to one tradition, it just flows through all of them. His guidance wasn't about dogma or rituals, but about inner sincerity, about how we show up, how we love, how we serve, and how we hold the world inside our hearts. And he thought that the divine is not somewhere else. It is in everyone and in everything. That understanding created that openness in me, a willingness to see that sacredness everywhere. And what's interesting is that I didn't realize how much of his teachings were preparing me for the Tao. It wasn't until many years, the moment where I just woke up suddenly feeling pulled towards Tao Te Ching, that everything clicked. The next day, I was doing a multi faith prayer to my guru. This prayer I had sung since childhood. And I found myself singing this line, Rahim Tao Tu. That means you are Rahim, the God that the Muslims worship, and you are the Tao. I was singing that all this while not realizing the Tao that my guru was trying to tell me. And for the first time, the Tao just lit up inside me, and I realized that his message of unity had already planted seeds in my heart long before I consciously knew what the Tao was, and it just felt like he had been preparing me to recognize the Tao when it arrived. So his influence wasn't about giving me answers; it was about expanding the space inside me to receive them. He taught me humility, authenticity, and the courage to look within. And when Tao finally entered my life, it felt like a continuation of everything he had already awakened in me. In many ways, my guru opened the door, and the Tao invited me through it.
Beautiful.
And
I mean, wow. Okay, podcast done. Everyone, there's your teaching. No, that's wonderful, and yeah, beautiful, and how fortunate that you had this guru in your life. Um, Now it was. I know you said he was open and accepting and found truth across all wisdom traditions. But did he grow up under a particular tradition, Hindu tradition, like Advaita or anything?
absolutely, yes, he was born into Hindu tradition.
Okay.
So he was
So
born
did
to a
he?
Hindu family.
Okay. So how long were you in India before you moved to the States?
I was there for the first 20 years of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you moved to the States to study, go to university.
So yeah, honestly, my life story it's literally been the dance of opposites. I grew up in India, right, where even access to clean water was a daily uncertainty. And I still
Right.
remember like standing in the line and waiting for the water to arrive and been through all of that. And then I moved to Australia. My husband is from Australia. So I moved to the United States 2007 for a job. So I came on a job visa, and I was just 1 year into my work. I finished my engineering in India, and I worked for a year, and then I got an opportunity to work in the United States. So I came here on work visa, and I've been here since then. But in between, I did live in Australia where my husband is from. So we did 3 years in Australia, and then I wanted to move back to United States again because this is where my heart is. My heart,
Mm,
my guru said, United States is your home. And he's making sure that I am here, John, because it is impossible for anyone to be on a H-1B visa for this long. And I don't even know when I'm going to get my green card. I don't want to,
yeah,
but his word that I will be in the US and I'm here and he's keeping me here. So I trust him.
yeah.
I do.
I was gonna ask if you're worried.
Oh yeah, I'm waiting
That's
for 20 years, John.
yeah,
So yeah, it is, but it's my destiny. I have to be here. Maybe I'll never get a
yeah,
citizenship, but it's okay.
yeah.
It
And you're
doesn't
here now.
matter. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm. So can you talk a little bit about how we can use paradox in our daily lives to navigate the anxieties that we face, and the other obstacles, emotional or otherwise?
Absolutely. This is such an important question, John, because the Tao Te Ching comes from a very specific culture, and the linguistic and the historical context, like ancient China, more than 2,500 years ago. And I'm very aware that I'm approaching it as someone who did not grow up inside that tradition and who came to the Tao not through a scholarship, but through a lived experience and some kind of a spiritual awakening. So yes, cultural tradition absolutely matter, but it is so relevant to the modern world because so when Lao Tzu wrote the book, he was facing a lot of political backlash that you could almost relate to what is happening today with the society's expectations and all of those stuff that's going on in the world today. So we have to relate that the circumstances that the Tao Te Ching was written to now. It is such a like these translations are just incredibly illuminating. The ones that just preserve that spaciousness, the poetry, the paradox, and they don't try to like over explain or domesticate the text. Instead, they honor the very mystery and they allow the reader to encounter the Tao in their own way. And I find that these versions feel more like invitations rather than instructions because
Absolutely.
that's what Lao Tzu himself is so
Yeah.
fascinating, right? According to legend, he didn't even want to write the text. He only wrote it because the gatekeeper asked him to leave something behind. So when I often wonder what he would say about all our translations today, like my personal approach has been like read multiple translations slowly, but to find the best one and to feel into that space between them. I mean, the real teaching is not in the wording, right? It's in the resonance. It's in the lines
Yeah.
that soften you, that confuse you, that rearrange you, and to make you pause because something deeper is stirring. So, I always tell them explore different translations and just notice what just opens inside you. And most
Yeah.
importantly, let the Tao meet you where you are. And because at the end of the day, it's not a commentary that transforms you. It's the conversation you begin having with the Tao itself.
Yes. It's continuous. You can keep coming back and pulling more out, and you go experience the world and bring more to it, and on it goes.
It's like,
Um, Another thing I wanted to pick up is this both and, that I feel a lot of Western culture lacks. We need the precise answer, final, this one.
mm,
So we may have a scientific view of something,
mm,
and we say, okay, that's what it is. It's this. And then over here, we may have a psychological, therapeutic, or maybe a mystical interpretation or explanation of something. And so we're like stuck in this either or, but not both and. And yeah, I think what is so powerful is that we can hold many frames, we can hold paradoxes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In Taoism, your identity is not like a fixed object. It is a flowing process, right? We suffer most when we cling to rigid ideas of who we are supposed to be. Like there's a verse 49 that says, "The sage has no fixed mind. She takes the mind of the people as her own." This doesn't mean the sage is empty of values or principles, right? It just means that she's free from rigidity, free from compulsive need to defend an identity.
Yeah.
Identity flexibility has many effects, right? It makes self growth possible. If my identity is rigid, I am this type of person. I don't feel that. I always react this way. Then growth is impossible because the identity has become a cage.
Yeah.
Flexibility allows us to evolve without self betrayal. It reduces the emotional suffering because emotional pain comes not from feeling itself, but it comes from believing the feeling defines who we are. I'm
Yeah.
anxious.
Mistake of identity.
Exactly. Like I'm anxious because anxiety is happening inside me. I'm
Right.
failing becomes this is a difficult moment. You know, identity loosens and emotions loosens its dominance too. And definitely in relationship it improves it because when our identity softens, we listen more and we assume less. We stop projecting old stories into new people. We see others with clarity instead of through ego's distortions. And the Tao shows us that identity is like water. It takes the shape of the present moment, not the shape of your past wounds or future fears. This doesn't make us inconsistent. And I've sat with that paradox because I always felt, do I always have to behave a certain way because I want to show the world that I'm a consistent person? But Tao
Right.
shatters that idea. It says, no, it don't have to be consistent. You have to be authentic on that in that
Mm.
very moment. And that identity flexibility is the nervous system's form of wisdom. It allows us to adapt, respond, and stay present without being pulled into old patterns. And in the Taoist view, strength isn't holding your shape, it's being able to change the shape without losing your center. And that is
Yeah.
and that is not holding your either. It's being in that space of in between. And it's so one of the deepest existential issues that I've ever felt is the question of identity and impermanence, right? The tension between wanting to be someone solid in the world and simultaneously sensing that everything, including myself, is always changing. It it it,
Yeah.
it showed up as this quiet, unsettling question like, who am I really when everything I identify with is constantly shifting? My
Right.
role shift, emotions, values shift, my sense of purpose widens and
I mean,
contracts with different seasons of life.
even in a single day, you may show up
Yeah,
as
different person.
employee, you wear that hat, you come home, your mom, and then,
Hmm.
yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think all humans face this deep need for some kind of permanency, that ego just
Yes.
trying to establish itself. Um, and yeah, that can create a lot of anxiety for many of
Yeah.
us. So it's certainly a process being able to learn to let go of that rigidity and just flow along this. ever changing river of experience.
Exactly. Exactly. Like trying to be fixed inside a changing universe is what creates suffering. The moment I stop trying to be permanent, something softens, and we begin to experience ourselves as less as rigid self and more as a process, something alive,
Yeah.
evolving, fluid. Instead of asking who am I begin asking what is arising now and how can I meet it honestly. Like
Yeah.
that shift dissolved that existential tension because the question transformed from a search for something solid into an intimacy with the present moment. Be here now. And what I learned is this, that the existential issue was never about knowing who I am. It was about holding into the belief that I had to know. The Tao taught me that I don't need to be a fixed thing. I can be a living thing. And that realization brought a kind of peace that wasn't based on certainty, but on trust. Trust in the moment, trust in unfolding, trust in the part of me that doesn't want or doesn't need a rigid identity to feel whole. And that was magical. Just having to experience that even once changes you, just changes the perspective of of yourself, because you're not forcing, you're not pushing. Taoism says that stillness isn't the absence of moment, right? It's the presence of alignment. And verse 15 talks about it. Be like still water. I'm like, why still water? Because still water reflects without distortion. You know,
Yeah.
to have the creativity and even to have the insight, they require this kind of clarity. And when the mind is agitated and trying to solve, control, or force something into existence, perception becomes cloudy and emotional noise just blocks subtle signals. Solutions hide not because they are far away, but because the mind is just too loud to hear them. And stillness shifts that internal landscape in so many profound ways. Given our nervous system finally exits the thread mode, and creativity this cannot happen in a fight or flight. So stillness kind of tells the body that, hey, this moment is safe.
Yeah.
And this is the birthplace of creativity, and emergence of intuition happens at that point.
Yes,
Insight
absolutely.
is yeah.
So this kind of gets at a concept in Taoism, Wu Wei, kind of effortless flow or
Yeah.
effortless doing or non-doing. Do you want to
Yeah.
expand on this concept a bit and how we may apply it in our lives?
Of course. So Wu Wei is often misunderstood, right? Because people hear effortless action and think it means doing nothing. But in Taoism,
Right.
Wu Wei doesn't mean inactivity. It means not forcing. It's the art of acting in alignment with what's happening rather than pushing against it. In environments like tech or parenting, where control, productivity, and quick solutions are often rewarded, practicing Wu Wei becomes a very intentional choice. So for me, it looks like responding instead of reacting, like
Yes.
guiding rather than controlling, and
Yeah.
allowing solutions to emerge instead of muscling them through. I've
Right.
learned to notice that the moment my body tightens, the sort of clench in the jaw or the shoulders, because that's usually the moment when I'm trying to force something.
Yep.
And when I feel that tightening, I just soften a little bit, like even a breath, even a breath long pause that create enough space for a wiser, more natural next step to appear. And that is the heart of Wu Wei. Not
Yeah.
doing less, but doing with less strain. Like not withdrawing from effort, but removing that unnecessary effort. And the irony is that when I stop gripping so tightly on the outcome, I actually show up more effectively. My
Right.
intuition becomes clearer, my words are calmer, My action lands with more precision. So Wu Wei isn't passive at all. It's deeply responsive. It's aligned action, and the kind that feels almost effortless because moving with the current, because you're not moving against it. You're just going with the flow. And that is your
Yeah.
natural state. And when you
Right.
align with that natural state, everything just works out. Just
Right.
works out. It's
Yeah,
magic.
there's a parallel to Buddhism here and the concept, the Pali language, the Buddha's language. The term is virya. But yeah, in Buddhism, it's often misunderstood that we just waste away into monistic oblivion. We don't do anything, you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it is more, it gives us freedom to respond with wisdom rather than just reactively out of conditioning. Have you dug into Zen at all? Because this Zen is kind of the clash of Taoism and Buddhism.
I it is so interesting because recently I was, in fact, thinking about like what are the differences between Buddhism and Taoism, or in what ways they are similar. I'd like to say they are two different paths towards freedom, but the
Yeah.
terrain they walk and the tools they use feel very different. Like both are profound wisdom traditions. I mean, both point us toward liberation from unnecessary suffering, but their approaches, and especially the different forms of Buddhism, right, they illuminate very
Yeah.
different aspects of the human experience. And here's a simple way to understand. The Buddhism begins with suffering, right? But Taoism begins with nature. Most schools of Buddhism start with the same foundation. What Theravada Buddhism calls the Four Noble Truths.
Hmm.
Life contains suffering. Suffering has causes. Suffering can end, and there is a path to that freedom. And Buddhism asks, what is the mind doing that creates suffering, and how do we unlearn it? And Taoism asks something different. What is life already doing, and how do we move with it? And where Buddhism investigates suffering, Taoism investigates flow. Where Buddhism studies the mind, Taoism studies nature. It's they're all like different tools, all rooted in training our mind. That the aim is to understand like the impermanence, no self, and suffering directly. Um, so it just cuts through these concepts entirely, and it says meditation and the direct experience to reveal one's true nature. And I think Tibetan Buddhism kind of combines. Any there's
Yeah,
I did
Tibetan
did a
is a
little
little
bit
more
of study,
direct. Yeah.
and Taoism takes a different way. It dissolves that mind's grip, return to naturalness.
Yeah.
And where Buddhism trains the observer, and Taoism asks us eventually to go beyond the observer, and where Buddhism clarifies thought, Taoism softens the compulsion to think. so so
Yeah.
there are a lot of similarities and differences, and I was very fascinated. But in one sentence, if I have to sum it all up, I would say Buddhism teaches us how to see clearly, and Taoism teaches us how to move naturally. And for
Hmm.
many people, like including me, the deepest transformation happens not by choosing one, but by letting both the perspectives illuminate different corners of the same mystery. And that being said, I grew up heavily in Hindu culture as well. I was born into a Hindu family, though my guru embraced multiple religion, and I've thought a lot about Hinduism and Taoism too. And I love speaking about this because it kind of ties together the three parts of yoga that I grew up with. The Taoist principle that found me later in life, and the living example that I witnessed in my guru. So in traditional yoga philosophy, right, the three classical paths to spiritual realization, the karma yoga, the path of selfless action, jnana yoga, the path of wisdom and inquiry, and bhakti yoga, the path of devotion and love. Each one emphasizes a different way of relating to life, Karma yoga uses hands, Jnana yoga uses mind, and Bhakti yoga uses your heart. And yet, the deeper you go, the more you realize that these paths are not separate. They're just different facets of the same jewel. What
Right.
surprised me much later in life is how beautifully this just aligns with the Taoist wisdom. The Tao describes life as a flow, a natural movement of intelligence that just runs through all things. And when we align with that moment, we find harmony. And when we resist, we suffer. I mean that, and in each of the three yogic paths is really a practice in softening that resistance. So you let that great Tao, Mother, Universe, Brahman, whatever you call to just work through you. And you have to trust this, that the same the force that that moves universes, that controls parallel verses and everything in this world is controlling you. Why would you not trust that same energy, that consciousness that you have to trust to get through all these little things that's gripping our mind, and that's what the yogas, the different parts of yoga, taught me. And honestly, I was blessed to witness my guru who embodied all the three paths so effortlessly. Like in karma yoga, he worked tirelessly. He built hospitals, schools, water systems. He was not your regular guru who sat there and preached. He did all this, but without
Wow.
claiming ownership. In Jnana Yoga, his clarity was
Humble.
piercing. He had this way of dissolving illusion with just a sentence. And in Bhakti Yoga, it was pure love, expansive, unconditional, transformative. Just watching him taught me something so profound, that you don't choose a path. You become the integration of all three. And that integration happens naturally when you deepen your sincerity, your clarity, and your love. And how these paths intertwine with Tao, I think that's what I discovered through my journey, is that Tao unifies all three yogas into one coherent moment. Karma yoga becomes Taoist wu wei, action without forcing. Jnana yoga becomes Taoist emptiness, the clarity through simplicity and letting go. And bhakti yoga becomes the Taoist softness, surrender, reverence, and flowing with the natural order. And all three lead you to the same place, a life aligned with something that is much greater than the ego. And Tao teaches that when you let go of that excess effort, excess knowledge, excess identity, you become receptive to the intelligence that guides everything. And yoga says the same thing, just in a different language. And it all kind of aligned for me at Tao, because Tao lets all of this exist and still, you know, lets me be who I am. I don't have to be a Taoist. I don't have to be a Hindu. I don't have to
Right.
fit in a label. I
Kind of
can
missed
be
the
who I
point.
am at this moment. So, you know, be the authentic self at that very moment,
Yeah.
and that changes the perspective and on even like the consciousness and all.
Yeah. So have you ever taught any spiritual practices, or is this just something that you came to on your own and you said, all right, I need to write this book. It doesn't matter who reads it. It doesn't,
You know, that's you hit the nail.
I love that.
That exactly what. Well, I did not. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a monk. It just came to me. Like I just woke up one day and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write this book on Taoism. I'm like so interested in Tao, and then with my guru, that incident that happened with the Tao and all that, and then I was like, okay, this is my life purpose to to get Tao out, because we honestly, my research process for embracing dogs was a little different from what people might expect, right? I didn't approach the Tao Te Ching, like I said, as a scholar, and I wasn't trying to produce a traditional academic translation. Instead, my process was just a blend of deep listening, personal inquiry, and engaging with the spirit of the text rather than dissecting its language. And of course, I did read multiple translations to understand the wide range of interpretations that already exist. Everything from more poetic versions to literal line by line translations. And I noticed how much variance there was between them, which actually reassured me that the Tao isn't meant to be pinned down to a single authoritative meaning. But the
Absolutely.
most,
What I was going to say. I mean,
yeah,
this isn't one person. Like, there's no
yeah,
authority on this. This is lived. It's each of ours. Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
moves through us.
But the most meaningful part of my research wasn't in the books, right? It was in my inner experience. Like you said, I would sit with the verse for days, sometimes weeks, until something in me softened or opened. And I wasn't
Mm,
trying to analyze it. I was trying to feel it. Like classical Chinese is incredibly compact, and each character carries layers of meaning,
mm,
imaginary, philosophy, cosmology. So I just let the simplicity guide me. I allowed the metaphor, the rhythm, and the silence to teach me from within. So you could say that my approach was more contemplative than academic, and I also drew from my upbringing, growing up around multiple belief systems and having shaped by my guru, Sri Sati Sai Baba, and whose teachings emphasized unity, simplicity, and the direct experience of truth. And that background gave me a framework for understanding the Tao, not as an intellectual concept, but as a living presence. So I consulted many translations, explored commentaries, and I researched the cultural and the historical context. But the real interpretation happened in a quiet space where the Tao and my own life met. My goal wasn't to explain the Tao, it was to express the Tao revealed itself to me, and to offer that in a way that feels accessible, simple, and also deeply human.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. And this, yeah, getting back to, you kind of mentioned Taoism as an artistic expression almost. Once you recognize this interconnected life force, and so rather than reacting, you get to respond from a place of love, of kindness, of compassion, joy.
Yeah,
And your life really becomes a beautiful work of art, kind of a co creation.
yeah,
Mm.
exactly, exactly. And one topic I was really looking into that I've not explored is that I want to talk about is love, because your podcast has a title, love. And I sat with it. I was like, love and understanding. What am I going to talk about love?
Mm.
And, with people, and I don't think anyone's ever asked me what Tao Te Ching says about love. But when
Mm.
I
Yeah,
sat with it,
love that.
ri- ri- so the Tao doesn't talk about love as an emotion. It talks love about as a state of being, right?
Mm.
In Tao, love isn't romantic. It isn't
No,
possessive. It isn't conditional or personal.
no,
So
yeah.
Taoist love is the kind of love that flows the way nature flows, quietly, steadily, without demanding anything in return. And one of the most beautiful teachings comes from verse 49, which says that sage has no fixed mind. To the good, he's good. To the unkind, he's also good. He's radical. This is radical, isn't it, John? Tao defines love not by the affection, but by stability, the ability to stay rooted in goodness, regardless of how others behave. Like love in Taoism is not a reaction, it's not a reward, it's a virtue expressed through presence. And then verse 49 like gives an image that to me is like the purest description of love in the Tao. The sage cares for all people as the mother cares for her children.
Yeah.
not with attachment, not with control, not with expectation, but with quiet, unshakable nourishment, the kind that doesn't collapse under pressure and that doesn't seek credit for forgiving. And for verse 59, like further expands on this and it says, the Tao gives birth, nourishes it, sustains it, protects it, and never claims ownership. This is love without grasping, love without recognition, love that supports life simply because life is worth supporting. And Taoist love is unconditional, like, but not self-sacrificing though. It is soft, but it's not weak. It's inclusive, but not naive. It is a love that emerges when you stop forcing, stop controlling, stop performing, and begin to allow yourself and others to be exactly as they are. And perhaps the most profound Taoist teaching on love is this: love is not something you do, love is what naturally arises when you're aligned with the Tao, when your heart is soft, when your mind is uncluttered, your identity loosens, and when you stop trying to bend your life to your will. And what remains is that openness, that compassion, that effortless generosity, and that is love in its truest form. The Tao doesn't teach us how to love, it teaches us how to be. And from that being, love flows on its own. And so well, I was thinking about like how do you teach Tao to children? Because when you think about love, the first thing that comes is love to our children. Like how do you like you find something so precious, and that's why I talk a lot about parenting as well in my book. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I struggle to teach her Tao because Tao is this abstract, at least in my thought, right? I've been thinking that it's such a hassle for me to teach about Tao to my daughter because she wouldn't understand this, right? But it doesn't work that way. You teach Tao through experience, not
Lived.
explanation.
Yep. Yep.
The Tao teaching begins with the radical line. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. So you don't sit a child down and lecture them about oneness or paradox. You
Yeah.
show them. You show them how water finds its way without force, how trees bend and don't break, how moon cycles through phases, how rain comes and goes, how feelings raise and pass. Children learn the Tao the same way nature expresses it, quietly, organically, without pressure. You teach
Yeah.
them that two truths can exist at once. Children feel deeply. I mean, often they think one feeling must cancel the other. But Taoist wisdom is you can be scared and brave at the same time. You can be sad and still safe. You can be frustrated and still loved. And you can not know and still be okay. This is paradox at its most practical level. And children understand it instantly because their minds are still fluid. And,
Yeah.
and you teach them through softness as strength. Like adults reward hardness, certainty, speed, and performance. But children thrive on softness, safety, gentleness, and space. Just like the Tao says, the soft overcomes the hard. When a child sees that softness is not weakness, that yielding, listening, and empathy make them wiser, not smaller, they naturally move in harmony with life. You teach them to trust their inner sense before conditioning sets in because children feel the truth in their bodies. They know when they're tired. They know when something feels off. They know when someone is kind. They just know it. They know when they need quiet. And Taoist way is not to overwrite that inner knowing with adult agendas. It is to strengthen it. You ask them, what does your body feel right now? Like,
Yeah.
what feels true to you? What do you need in this moment? That question alone, John, plants the seeds of lifelong alignment for them. Like you model that non-forcing, and children learn Wu Wei not from instructions, but from your nervous system. If you rush,
Yeah.
they rush. If you grip,
Yep.
they grip. You soften, they soften. And teaching the Tao is teaching them the felt sense of I am allowed to move in my own pace. I can rest when I'm tired. I don't need to force myself to fit. And your behavior is the lesson. and you teach them the reverence, not religion type of reverence, but reverence for nature, for quiet
Yeah.
moments, for breath, reverence for what cannot be explained. Children understand mystery better than adults. The Tao invites them to keep that wonder alive. You remind them that life is not a race. The world will eventually teach them compete, compare, hurry, and become. But the Tao teaches be present, be real, be in the rhythm. If a child learns rhythm more than performance, they will grow into an adult who trusts themselves and doesn't break under the weight of the world.
Yeah.
So, how do you teach the Tao to the child? I mean, you don't teach it as a content, you live
Art
it
of
in front
being.
of them.
Yeah. 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 I have a 10-year-old daughter as well, and 12-year-old twins and a 13-year-old
Oh
boy.
my gosh.
Yeah. And I homeschool them, and
Whoa.
that decision was largely because kids go to public
Mhm.
school and they're told this and that, and
It's
it takes their
full.
whole their 20s and maybe 30s to unwind all that, to find their inner child again,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I'm
no,
so
I
glad.
think I
Yeah.
think that's important, and I think a lot of parents miss that because
Yep.
we're all trying to check these boxes of what society expects from us, and then
Yep.
we feel like we have to force that onto our kids, that they need to meet these certain standards and achievements. And yeah, it really takes the natural expression, that flower blooming from the child, the human.
Yep.
um yeah, so it's sad, but yeah, my kids, man, they are sharp reflections for me. They are wise little creatures.
Yep.
So sweet, and
So wise.
yeah, get along so well together. And
Mm.
yeah, we made it, my partner and I,
Yeah.
we have made it a goal of ours to never say something just out of authority. If When we respond to our
It's
kids, it's
beautiful.
usually with a question. Well, how do you feel about that? And like you
Yep.
said, hey, can I have some more dessert, or can I have, well, check in with your body. How does your body feel? What do you think?
Yep.
And so you're kind of arming them with that intuitive Taoist force, that wisdom, that
Yep. Yep.
intelligence. So yeah, beautiful to see that there's other parents out there.
We're crazy parents.
Crazy
The one
hippie parents.
that's what people call us, John, outside
Goddamn
these
hippies.
forums.
Yeah, we live on about 20 acres just tucked up against
Yes.
Uinta National Forest. So
Cool.
our kids are true
Beautiful.
hippies, barefoot, running through the forest and the stream, and yeah.
So I can't wait to meet them. We get to meet them. That would be wonderful. I would love for my daughter to meet your kids
Yeah.
and for me too.
Yes.
Really good.
Love that. Well, is there anything you feel like we missed that you want to touch on?
I think we covered a lot of good topics. I think we touched really good topics, and thank you for invoking those thoughts and those discussions. I don't think I've talked about this before, so these are some new insights and stuff that came out through this podcast. I'm really excited to see how the Tao just unfolds in itself, because right now I am living that paradox, because it's the paradox that I'm living right now is the dance between stepping forward and letting go. Like, I'm sharing my work more publicly than ever before. My book,
Hmm.
my reflection on the Tao, like my whole personal life is on that book, because it was a lived embodiment of the Tao is what I wanted to reflect on my book. It's my own spiritual journey. And this requires
Vulnerable.
visibility. And visibility has never been my natural comfort zone. It's the way to
It's
step
hard.
forward, to use my voice to be seen. And at the same time, I'm practicing something equally important too, non-attachment, and
Hmm.
non-attachment to how the work is received, how it's
Yeah.
interpreted, or whether it creates waves in the way my mind might hope for. So I'm living in this beautiful tension between expression and surrender, between
Hmm.
offering what feels true to me and releasing any control over what happens next. Some days the stepping forward feels easier, and other days just letting go feels more natural. So, but most
Right.
days they're all happening at once. So
Yeah.
I'm learning to stay present in that paradox without needing it to resolve. It's a tender place, but it's also an expansive one, and it's teaching me in real time what the Tao always teaches. We grow the most in the spaces where the opposites meet. So thank you so much for having me here, John. I really, really appreciate the space that you've created for people like me, ordinary people who have walked an inner journey and feel called to give voice to something we've discovered along the way. Like I said, I'm not a scholar, not a monk. I'm not someone who set out to be an expert. I'm simply a person who encountered the Tao at the moment of a deep transformation, and it changed the entire texture of my life. To be able to share even a small part of that experience here is a true honor. So, thank you for opening this platform and for inviting these conversations and for giving us the opportunity to speak from the place of authenticity and a lived experience. I'm very, very grateful to be here, John. Thank
Mm.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think it's important that ordinary voices are heard. Sometimes it can be easier to connect because if there's an academic or someone with, you know,
Exactly.
titles or whatever it may be, it's like, well,
Yep.
they
I'm
can do
none.
that, but I'm just an ordinary folk, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's
Yep.
important to give ordinary people voices. So,
Thank you. Thank you
yeah,
so much.
yeah. Thank you again, Prashanthi. Until next time.